We sat by the Christmas tree in silence, the lights blinking like nothing was wrong. My daughter kept staring at the stairs. Finally she whispered, "Dad, why is Grandma crying upstairs?" My mother never cried, not when my father died, not when she lost her house. It was Christmas Eve, and I already knew something had broken. Christmas had always been my mother's holiday. Even after my father passed, even after the house got quieter and the family smaller, she insisted on hosting. Same tree, same ornaments, same stubborn routine. She said it made her feel like things hadn't changed, like time could be paused for just one night a year. This year I noticed the pauses were longer. Her smiles came late, her hands trembled when she poured coffee. Still she told us all to come. "I'm fine," she said, "just tired." My wife and I arrived early with our daughter Hannah. She's 16 now, old enough to notice what adults try to hide, but young enough to be scared by it. The house looked the same from the outside, lights along the roofline, wreath on the door. Inside, though, something felt off. My mother hugged Hannah too tightly. When my wife asked if she needed help upstairs, Mom said no a little too fast, and disappeared anyway. Dinner passed quietly. Too quietly. My mother barely touched her food. She kept glancing toward the staircase, like she was waiting for something to come down or afraid something might. I tried to ask if she was okay. She waved me off. "Eat," she said. "Food gets cold whether you worry or not." That was her way of ending a conversation. After dinner, we moved into the living room. The tree lights were on, presents underneath, the usual ritual waiting to happen. But no one reached for a gift. My wife sat stiffly on the couch. Hannah sat on the floor, arms wrapped around her knees. I poured myself a drink. I didn't really want. The clock ticked louder than it should have. That's when Hannah asked the question. "Dad," she said softly, not looking at me, "why is Grandma crying upstairs?" The words landed heavy. My wife turned toward the stairs immediately. I felt my chest tighten. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Did you hear something?" Hannah nodded. "When I went to use the bathroom, I heard her. She was crying like she couldn't breathe." My wife stood up. "I'm going to check on her." "No," I said too quickly. I didn't know why. Maybe because I already suspected the answer. Maybe because part of me didn't want to know yet. "I'll go." The stairs creaked the same way they always had. Halfway up I heard it too. A low sound, broken, muffled by a pillow maybe. My mother's voice. I knocked gently. "Mom." It stopped. Silence stretched. Then, "Just a minute." I waited. When she opened the door, her eyes were red, her face pale. She tried to smile. "See? Fine." "You're not fine," I said. "What's going on?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "Not tonight, Mom." She stepped aside and let me in. The room smelled faintly of old paper and dust. On the bed were several envelopes, spread out like someone had been searching through them in a panic. One was open. I recognized the return address immediately. "A law office. What is this?" I asked. She sat down heavily. "I wasn't supposed to open it yet." "Yet?" I said. "Open what yet?" She looked up at me, eyes filled with something I hadn't seen before. "Fear. After Christmas," she said. "They told me to wait until after Christmas." I picked up the letter. It was dated 3 weeks earlier. I scanned the first few lines and felt the room tilt. It mentioned property, an estate review, a beneficiary dispute. "Mom," I said slowly. "Whose estate?" She swallowed. "Your father's." My father had been dead for 12 years. "That was settled," I said. "You handled everything." She shook her head. "I handled what I knew." "What does that mean?" She pressed her lips together. "There's something you don't know about your father, about before you were born." I sat down across from her. My hands felt numb. "You don't get to say that and stop." She closed her eyes. "I was young. We were newly married. He disappeared for 6 months, said it was work. I believed him. And, I said. And last month, she said quietly, I got a letter from a woman I've never met. She says she was married to him too. The words didn't make sense at first. That's not possible. She had documents. My mother said, marriage license, old photos, and a daughter. I stared at her. A daughter. She's about your age, my mother said. Maybe a year older. My stomach dropped. Why are we hearing about this now? Because your father left her something, she said. Something he didn't tell me about. And now that property is being contested. What property? She hesitated again. This house. I stood up. That's insane. Dad wouldn't. He did, she said sharply. I've seen it. Thomas fell between us. Downstairs I heard Hannah laugh nervously at something my wife said, trying to keep things normal. I felt like the floor between the 2 levels of the house was paper thin. What are you going to do? I asked. She looked up at me, eyes wet again. I don't know. That's why I'm crying. I picked up the letter again. At the bottom was a phone number. A name. A lawyer I didn't recognize. When were you going to tell me? I asked. After Christmas, she said again. I wanted one last normal one. I thought about Hannah downstairs. About the tree. About the silence. It's already not normal, I said. She nodded. I know. A knock came at the door. My wife's voice. Everything okay? I opened the door just enough. We'll be down in a minute. My mother reached out and grabbed my hand. Please, she said, don't tell Hannah yet. I didn't answer, because I didn't know if I could promise that. I stood at the top of the stairs longer than I should have, my hand still on the banister, listening to the normal sounds of downstairs life trying to survive. My wife was talking, her voice deliberately light. Hannah laughed once, a short laugh that didn't quite land. Christmas music played softly, like it was embarrassed to be there. I felt like I was holding a secret that was already too heavy to carry. When I finally went back down, my mother stayed upstairs. She said she had a headache. That was her way of retreating without admitting defeat. My wife looked at me immediately. She knows me too well. What's going on? She asked quietly. Later, I said. Not in front of Hannah. Hannah glanced between us. Did I do something wrong? No, I said quickly. Of course not. I sat down across from her. Your grandma's just tired. She nodded. But I could tell she didn't believe me. She's always been like that. Reading the room before anyone else admits something's off. That used to make me proud. That night, it scared me. We decided to open gifts. Partly because it was expected. Partly because no one knew what else to do. My mother didn't come down. I told myself she needed time. I told myself we'd talk later. I told myself a lot of things that didn't make it true. Hannah opened a sweater, a book, a gift card. She smiled politely. My wife handed me a small box. Inside was a watch I'd mentioned once months ago. I thanked her, but my mind wasn't there. I kept seeing the letter on my mother's bed, the lawyer's name, the words beneficiary dispute. After an hour, Hannah asked if she could go upstairs to check on Grandma. I hesitated. My wife caught my eye. Let her, she said softly. She already knows something's wrong. Hannah went up slowly. The house felt even quieter without her. My wife sat beside me. What did your mom say? She asked. I exhaled. Dad had another family, before us. Maybe at the same time. She didn't react right away. She just looked at me. Are you serious? There's a daughter, I said, and apparently, a claim on the house. My wife leaned back, processing. That's a lot. I know, and your mom? She's devastated, I said. She found out 3 weeks ago. Upstairs, I heard muffled voices, Hannah and my mother. I couldn't make out the words, but I could hear the tone. Gentle, careful, like both of them were afraid. One wrong sentence would shatter something. A few minutes later, Hannah came back down. Her eyes were red. She sat quietly, curled into herself. My wife reached for her hand. "Do you want some cocoa?" she asked. Hannah shook her head. "Grandma said she's sorry," she said. "But she didn't say why," I swallowed. "We'll talk about it tomorrow," I said. "Okay," Hannah nodded again. She was doing that a lot. We left earlier than planned. My mother hugged Hannah again, whispered something I couldn't hear. She hugged me too. "I'm sorry," she said. "For tonight, get some rest," I said. "We'll figure this out." Driving home. No one spoke for a long time. The radio stayed off. Snow started falling lightly, blurring the streetlights. Hannah stared out the window. My wife stared straight ahead. I felt like the ground under my life had shifted, and no one else had noticed yet. At home, Hannah went straight to her room. My wife and I sat at the kitchen table. "So what now?" she asked. "I call the lawyer," I said. "Tomorrow. And this woman?" she asked. "The daughter?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "I don't even know her name yet." My wife nodded slowly. "You're going to meet her." It wasn't a question. That night I didn't sleep much. I kept replaying memories of my father, the man who taught me how to ride a bike, who sat in the front row at my graduation, who cried quietly at my wedding. I tried to fit another family into those memories and couldn't. It felt like trying to force a puzzle piece where it didn't belong. The next morning, I called the number on the letter. The lawyer answered with a practiced calm. He confirmed everything. There had been a second marriage, annulled quietly. Years later, a daughter born shortly before my parents married. My father had left her a partial interest in the house, held in trust until my mother passed. "So why now?" I asked. "The daughter recently became aware of the arrangement," he said. "She's requested a review." Requested, I repeated. "Or demanded." There was a pause. "She's retained counsel." After I hung up, I sat there staring at my phone. My wife came in, coffee in hand. "Well, it's real," I said. "All of it." She sat down across from me. "And Hannah, we haven't told her everything." I said, "Just that. Grandpa had secrets." My wife sighed. "She's old enough to understand. But that doesn't mean it won't hurt." That afternoon, my mother called. "She wants to meet you," she said quietly. "Who?" "The daughter," she said. "Her name is Elaine." My chest tightened. "When?" "Soon," my mother said, "before lawyers turn this into something ugly." I looked at my wife. She nodded. "Okay," I said. "We'll meet." We agreed on a neutral place, a diner halfway between our towns. 2 days after Christmas, when I hung up, I felt a strange mix of dread and curiosity. I didn't know what I was more afraid of. Finding out she hated us, or finding out she didn't. The night before the meeting, Hannah came into the kitchen while I was cleaning up. "Dad," she said. "Am I allowed to ask something?" "Always," I said. "Did Grandpa lie to us?" I paused. "Yes," I said. "About some things." "Does that mean you could lie too?" she asked. The question hit harder than anything else so far. I knelt in front of her. "I hope not," I said. "And if I ever do, I want you to call me out." She nodded, satisfied for now. She hugged me tightly, then went back to her room. The next morning, I drove alone to the diner. My mother said she wasn't ready. My wife said she trusted me. I pulled into the parking lot early and sat there, watching cars come and go. Then I saw her. She looked ordinary, mid-50s maybe. Brown coat, sensible shoes. She hesitated at the door like she wasn't sure she should go in. For a moment, I felt an unexpected surge of empathy. Then I remembered the letter. The house, my mother crying upstairs. Elaine spotted me and walked over. She stopped a few feet away. "You're David," she said. "Yes," I said. "And you're Elaine," she nodded. "Thank you for meeting me." I gestured to the booth. "Let's sit." As we slid in across from each other, she looked at me closely. "You look like him," she said softly. I didn't know whether to take that as comfort or warning, and before I could respond, she reached into her bag and placed a folded document on the table between us. "There's something you should see," she said. I stared at it, my heart starting to race again. I didn't touch the document right away. It sat between us like something alive, like it might bite if I moved too fast. Elaine noticed. She pulled her hands back and folded them in her lap, giving me space I hadn't asked for, but suddenly needed. "You don't have to read it yet," she said. "I just didn't want you to think I came here empty-handed." I finally looked at her properly. She had my father's eyes. There was no denying it now. Same shape, same tired kindness. That realization landed heavier than the legal threat ever could. This wasn't just paperwork. This was blood. "What is it?" I asked. "A letter," she said. "From him, written years ago. He asked my mother to give it to me when the time felt right. She never did. I found it after she died. I picked it up slowly. My name was written on the envelope, in my father's handwriting. I hadn't seen that handwriting in 12 years. "I didn't know about you," I said quietly. "I swear, I believe you." Elaine said, "That's why I wanted to meet you before everything got ugly." I opened the letter. The words blurred at first, then came into focus. He wrote about mistakes, about fear, about choosing the wrong kind of silence. He admitted he'd tried to protect everyone and ended up hurting everyone instead. He wrote that he loved both families, that he knew it wasn't fair, that he hoped one day his children would understand, even if they never forgave him. At the bottom, one line stood out. "Tell David I'm sorry I made him carry this." My throat tightened. I folded the letter and set it down. "So why the lawyers?" I asked. "If this is about understanding," Elaine exhaled slowly, "because understanding doesn't pay rent, or medical bills, or fix 20 years of being the secret child." There it was, the part I couldn't argue with. "I didn't ask for the house," she said quickly. "Not at first, I just asked questions. The lawyer thing started after your mom stopped returning calls. My mother just found out," I said. 3 weeks ago." Elaine's face softened. "Then I truly am sorry about the timing." We sat there in silence for a moment, two strangers connected by a man who wasn't there to explain himself. "What do you want?" I asked. Finally, she hesitated. "I want acknowledgement," she said. "And I want what he promised, not to hurt your mother, not to take her home out from under her. But I can't walk away with nothing." I nodded slowly. "My mother is fragile right now." "I know," Elaine said. "That's why I asked to meet you, not her." I appreciated that more than I wanted to admit. We talked for another hour. About our childhoods. About the parts that didn't overlap. She told me how she'd watched my father from a distance at my college graduation, standing near the back, tears in his eyes. I told her about fishing trips, about bad jokes, about the man I thought I knew. When we stood to leave, she touched the letter gently. "Keep it," she said. "You deserve to have it." Driving home, my head felt full and hollow at the same time. I rehearsed what I would say to my mother. None of it sounded right. When I got to her house, her car was in the driveway. The lights were on upstairs. I knocked and let myself in. She was sitting at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug she wasn't drinking. "You met her," she said. "Yes," I said. "Her name is Elaine." My mother nodded slowly. "Is she angry?" "She's hurt," I said, "and tired." My mother closed her eyes. "So am I." I sat across from her. "She doesn't want to throw you out," I said. "She wants what Dad promised." My mother laughed softly without humor. "He promised a lot of things." I handed her the letter. "He wrote this for me. But it's really for both of us." She read it quietly, tears falling onto the paper. When she finished, she pressed it to her chest. "I wish he'd been brave," she said. "Me too," I said. That night, We made a decision. We would try to resolve this without tearing each other apart. We would meet together, talk like people, not opponents. But even as we agreed, I knew something else was coming, something we hadn't accounted for, because the next morning, my wife answered the phone and her face went pale. "It's your mother's bank," she said, covering the receiver. "They're asking about a line on the house." I felt my stomach drop again. "A line?" I asked. My wife shook her head. "No, someone else." And in that moment I realized my father's secrets were deeper than either family knew. I took the phone from my wife and stepped into the hallway. The banker's voice was careful, the way people sound when they know they're about to ruin someone's morning. He explained that a lien had been placed on the house years ago, quietly, legally, attached to an outstanding loan my father had taken out late in his life. A loan no one in our family knew existed. "How much?" I asked. There was a pause, then a number that made my knees weak. "That can't be right," I said. "The house is paid off. The mortgage is," he said. "This is separate." I thanked him and hung up, then leaned my forehead against the wall for a moment. Christmas decorations lined the hallway, cheerful and completely out of place. When I went back into the kitchen, my mother was already watching my face. "What is it?" she asked. "There's a lien on the house," I said. "From Dad, from years ago." She shook her head slowly. "He promised me there were no more surprises." My wife sat down heavily. "Who holds it?" "That's the thing," I said. "The bank says it was recently transferred." "Sold. To who?" my mother asked. I swallowed. "A private party." The room went quiet. I could hear Hannah upstairs moving around in her room, normal life continuing, unaware of the new cracks spreading underneath it. That afternoon, Elaine called. Her voice was tight. "I just found out something," she said. "There's a lien on the house." "We know," I said. "Do you know who owns it now?" "Yes," she said. "That's why I'm calling." My heart started to race again. "Who?" She hesitated. "My half-brother." The word half landed wrong, like it didn't fit in my mouth. "What half-brother?" "From his third relationship," she said, quietly. I closed my eyes. "You're telling me Dad had another child?" "Yes," she said. "A son. He found out about the lien and bought it. He plans to force a sale." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "Why?" "Because he's angry," Elaine said. "And because he can," Elaine said. "And because he can." That night, we sat around the kitchen table again. It felt like we'd been doing that non-stop since Christmas Eve, each conversation heavier than the last. Hannah came down halfway through and stopped when she saw our faces. "What now?" she asked. I didn't want to lie anymore. "Your grandfather wasn't who we thought," I said. "And some people are fighting over his mistakes." "Are we losing Grandma's house?" she asked. My mother reached for her hand. "Not if I can help it," she said. But I could hear the uncertainty in her voice. We called the lawyer again. This time his tone was different, sharper. He explained the mechanics of the lien, the leverage it gave the holder, the limited options we had without a drawn-out court battle. "And court," he said gently, "will not be kind to your mother." After the call, my wife spoke up. "What about talking to him?" Elaine joined us on speaker. "He won't meet," she said. "He says the past is done talking." I stared at the table. "What's his name?" "Michael," Elaine said. "He's 48. 48. 48. Younger than me. Another lifetime." My father had lived without us. That night I couldn't sleep again. I kept thinking about my father's choices, how one lie had multiplied into a dozen lives bent around it. I wondered how much of this was about money and how much was about being seen. In the morning, I made a decision that scared me. I told my wife and my mother I was going to try anyway. "Try what?" my mother asked. "Find him," I said. "And talk to him." Elaine helped. She gave me an address, a business, a phone number. He wouldn't answer. I drove there 2 days later, a small office park. Nothing remarkable. I waited in my car, rehearsing words that felt inadequate. Finally, I went inside. He was standing at the reception desk when I walked in, broad shoulders. Same eyes again, same unmistakable family marker. "You're Michael," I said. He turned slowly. "And you're David." "I just want to talk," I said. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You've had your whole life to talk." "That's not fair," I said. "I didn't know you existed." "Neither did I," he said. "Until it was convenient. People were watching." He gestured toward a conference room. 5 minutes, inside the air felt tight. "Why force a sale?" I asked. "You know what that would do to her." He shrugged. "She lived a lie, so did you. She's an old woman," I said. "She did nothing to you." He leaned forward. "She married a man who abandoned my mother, who abandoned me. Why should she get to die in comfort while we scramble?" "Elaine isn't doing this," I said. "Elaine wants peace," he said. "I want justice." "And this is justice?" I asked. "This is leverage," he said. "Same thing in the real world." I left, knowing I hadn't changed his mind. But I had learned something else. This wasn't about money. It was about making someone else feel the way he'd felt his whole life. When I got home, my mother was waiting. "Did you fix it?" she asked. "No," I said honestly. "But I'm not done, because as much as Michael wanted revenge, I was starting to realize something else. My father had left more than secrets. He had left choices. And now one of them was mine. I didn't tell my mother everything about that meeting. I told her enough to explain the danger, not enough to deepen the hurt. At her age, there's a line between honesty and cruelty, and I wasn't sure where it was anymore. She listened quietly, nodding, her hands folded the way they used to be when my father was alive and making decisions she didn't agree with. "So he wants to punish me," she said finally. "He wants to be heard," I said. "But yes, he's willing to hurt you to do it." She looked down at the table. "I lived my whole life believing I was the only wife, the only family, and now I'm supposed to pay for his sins." "You shouldn't," I said, "and I won't let that happen." Those words felt big as soon as I said them. Promises always do. That evening, Hannah asked if she could skip school the next day. "I just don't feel like pretending everything's normal," she said. I understood exactly what she meant. I let her stay home. We sat together in the living room, not talking much, just existing in the same space. And she asked, "Do you think Grandpa loved us?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "I think he just didn't know how to love without hurting someone else." She nodded, absorbing that in the quiet way only kids can later. Later that night, Elaine called again. "Michael's filing paperwork tomorrow," she said. "Once he does, it gets harder to stop." "How much time do we have?" I asked. "Days," she said. "Maybe less." After we hung up, I stared at the wall for a long time. Then I remembered something from the letter. A line I'd skimmed past the first time, because it hadn't made sense then. "There's one account no one knows about." I pulled the letter out again and read it slowly. My father had been vague, but deliberate. He mentioned a safety deposit box, opened under a different name, meant as a final correction. I felt my pulse quicken. The next morning I went to the bank. I brought the letter. I brought my ID. I brought a hope I didn't want to name yet. The clerk disappeared into the back for a long time. When she returned, she carried a small metal box. Inside were documents. Old account statements, a trust agreement, and one cashier's check, dated just 3 months before my father died. It was enough to satisfy the lien, enough to leave something meaningful for Elaine and Michael, enough to keep my mother in her home. I sat there in the bank chair, stunned by the weight of it. My father had known this day would come. He hadn't been brave enough to face it while alive, but he hadn't left us completely empty-handed either. The question was how to use it. That afternoon I called Elaine and asked her to meet again. This time I asked Michael to come too. He refused at first, then Elaine said something that made him change his mind. He left something for you, she said. We met in the same diner. Michael arrived late, sat stiffly, arms crossed. I laid the documents on the table. This is what Dad left, I said. It covers the lien, it gives you both something real. But only if we do this together. Michael stared at the papers. Why now? He asked. Because if you force a sale, I said, you get money and lose everything else. If you don't, you get acknowledgement, closure, and something that doesn't come from tearing an old woman's life apart. He laughed bitterly. You think money ever fixed this? No, I said. But revenge won't either. He didn't answer right away. He read. Elaine watched him carefully, holding her breath like she'd done her whole life. Finally, he looked up. And what do you get? He asked me. I thought about my mother, about Hannah, about Christmas lights, blinking through silence. I get to stop this from defining the rest of our lives, I said. Michael leaned back. For the first time, the anger cracked, just a little. I'll think about it, he said. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no. That night my mother slept for the first time in days. Hannah asked if Grandma would be okay. I told her I thought so. But I knew one thing for certain. Whatever Michael decided next would change us all, and I didn't know which way he'd choose yet. Michael didn't call the next day, or the day after that. Each morning my phone stayed silent, and each night I found myself checking it one last time before bed, like that might somehow change things. My mother tried to act normal again. She baked cookies. She didn't need. She watched old movies she'd already seen, but every time the phone rang, her shoulders tensed. On the third day Elaine called. He's struggling, she said. I don't think anyone's ever asked him to choose peace before. I get that, I said. But time isn't on our side. I know, she said. The filing deadline is tomorrow morning. That night I sat with my wife at the kitchen table long after Hannah had gone to bed. What if he doesn't take it? She asked. Then we fight, I said. But it won't be clean. She reached for my hand. You've done everything right. I wished that felt like enough. The next morning my phone rang at 6:17 a.m. unknown number. I answered before it could stop. Meet me, Michael said. Alone. We met at a park near his office. Cold, quiet, early. He looked tired, older than the last time I'd seen him. He didn't waste time. I grew up watching him leave, he said. Every promise, every birthday. I told myself, if I ever got the chance, I'd make someone else feel that loss. I know, I said. He stared at the ground, but reading that letter, knowing he planned for this, it doesn't fix anything, but it makes it harder to pretend he didn't care at all. What do you want? I asked, again. He exhaled. I want my name acknowledged. I want the truth told, and I want her. He paused. Your mother to know I don't hate her. Relief hit me so fast I had to sit down. We can do that, he nodded once. I'll release the lien. When I got home my mother was at the window. She knew before I spoke. She covered her mouth and cried, the kind of crying that empties you out instead of breaking you apart. A week later, we met again, all of us. Around the same table where Christmas dinner had nearly fallen apart. Elaine sat beside Michael. My mother sat across from them. Hands shook. Voices trembled. I didn't know, my mother said, and I'm sorry you grew up without him. Michael nodded. I know you didn't know. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something close. We told Hannah the full truth that night. She listened quietly, then said, So we have more family. Yes, I said. She smiled, small but real. That's okay. That spring my mother stayed in her house. The tree came down. The lights went away. Life moved forward, a little bent, but intact. On the last day, We were all together. Michael pulled me aside. "You didn't have to do this," he said. "Yes," I said, "I did. Because some legacies are about what you leave behind, and some are about what you choose to fix." After that meeting, something shifted that I didn't expect. The crisis had passed, but the aftershocks hadn't. For weeks, I kept waiting for another phone call, another document, another surprise from the past. None came. Instead, what arrived was quieter and somehow harder to deal with. Normal life. My mother started calling again, not with panic in her voice, but with small questions. Did Hannah still like banana bread? Was the plumber's number still on the fridge? Ordinary things. But every now and then she'd pause mid-sentence, like she was remembering something she couldn't quite name. Grief doesn't leave when problems get solved. It just changes shape. Elaine and Michael stayed in touch. Cautiously at first. Group texts that were strictly practical. Signatures, transfers, deadlines. Then one day, Elaine sent a photo. It was of her as a child, standing beside my father at a park. I stared at it longer than I should have. The way he leaned toward her was unmistakable. He had leaned toward me the same way in my childhood photos. I showed it to my wife that night. She studied it quietly. "You okay?" she asked. "I don't know," I said. "Honestly, I feel like I'm meeting my father again." But without his voice, she nodded. "Maybe that's the point. You get to decide what he means now." That idea stayed with me. Hannah, in her own way, adjusted faster than any of us. Teenagers are good at that. They don't romanticize the past the way adults do. One afternoon, she asked if Elaine had kids. When I said yes, she shrugged. "Cool. More cousins." It was so simple, it almost hurt. Spring came. My mother insisted on hosting Easter. I hesitated before agreeing, but she sounded stronger, more grounded. "I don't want to hide anymore," she said. "If we're doing this, we're doing it honestly." Elaine and Michael came. It was awkward at first. No one knew where to sit, who to talk to. But Hannah broke the tension by dragging Elaine's youngest into the backyard to show him the old swing set. Laughter followed. Real laughter. It felt like permission. At one point I found my mother and Elaine alone in the kitchen. They weren't talking, just standing side by side washing dishes. It was an image I hadn't known to imagine before. Two women connected by a man who failed them both, choosing to stand anyway. Later Michael pulled me aside again. "I used to think if I ever met you," he said, "I'd hate you." "And now?" I asked. He thought for a moment. "Now I think we were both robbed. Just differently." That felt true. As weeks turned into months, the story stopped being the first thing people asked about. It became background. Something you knew but didn't lead with. My mother's health improved. Not dramatically, but steadily. She started gardening again, planning things beyond the next week. Once, she even laughed about how stubborn my father had been. That felt like progress. One evening, Hannah asked me to drive her to Grandma's, just the two of them. I waited in the car while she went inside. When she came back out, her eyes were red but calm. She told me everything, Hannah said as she buckled in, about how scared she was, about how she didn't know. "How do you feel?" I asked. She said she was sorry, Hannah replied. "So, I think we're okay." I realized then that the story I'd been carrying so heavily wasn't just mine to resolve. Everyone had their own version, their own ending to write. The following Christmas came faster than I expected. We debated whether to gather again. Old habits die hard. But my mother insisted. "Silence didn't protect us last time," she said. "I don't want another quiet Christmas." We all came. Elaine and Michael too. The same tree. New ornaments. Some awkward moments. Some genuine ones. At one point we sat by the tree after dinner. The same spot where everything had begun the year before. No one spoke for a minute. Then Hannah broke the silence. "Grandma," she said, "are you crying?" My mother laughed softly. Yes, she said. But these are different. Good different? Hannah asked. Yes, my mother said. Good different. I looked around the room, at people who hadn't chosen each other but were choosing, again and again, how to move forward. I thought about my father, about how much damage one person's fear can cause, and how much healing can come from one decision to stop it from spreading further. Later that night, as we cleaned up, my wife slipped her hand into mine. You did something important, she said. We all did, I replied. Outside, snow started falling lightly, just like the year before, but this time, it didn't feel like something was about to collapse. It felt like something had finally settled, and for the first time in a long time, the quiet didn't scare me. After that Christmas, life didn't suddenly become perfect. It became honest, and that I learned was harder in some ways than crisis mode. When there's a fire, you move without thinking. When the flames are out, you're left staring at the damage, deciding what to repair and what to let go. Michael started coming around more often, though never unannounced. He was careful, like someone afraid of overstepping. One afternoon he helped my mother fix a loose step on the back porch. They worked mostly in silence, but when he left my mother said something I didn't expect. He's good with his hands, she said. Your father was too. There was no bitterness in her voice. Just observation, acceptance, maybe. Elaine and I talked more as well. Not about lawyers or documents anymore, but about small things. Books we'd read, places we'd lived. Once she told me about a song our father used to hum when he was nervous. I laughed because he'd done the same thing my whole life, and I'd never noticed it for what it was. He hummed when he didn't know how to say something hard, she said. That explained a lot. Hannah surprised me the most. She asked real questions, thoughtful ones. Not just about what had happened, but about why people hide parts of themselves. One night, while we were washing dishes together, she said, I think Grandpa was scared of disappointing everyone. I think you're right, I said. She nodded. That doesn't make it okay, but it makes it make sense. I realized then she was growing up faster than I was ready for, shaped not by lies, but by learning how fragile adults really are. In late summer, my mother had a health scare. Nothing dramatic, but enough to remind us how close we'd come to losing time we thought we had. Michael drove her to the hospital before I could even get there. When I arrived, he was sitting in the waiting room, hands clasped, staring at the floor. She's sleeping, he said quietly. Doctor says she'll be fine. I sat down beside him. For the first time it felt natural. That night after she was discharged, my mother asked all of us to come by. She sat at the dining table, the same place where so many hard conversations had happened. I need to say something, she said. We waited. I spent years thinking silence was kindness, she said, that not asking questions protected my family. I see now it only delayed the pain. She looked at Elaine, then at Michael. I can't change what he did, but I can choose what happens next. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a small stack of envelopes. I wrote letters, she said. For each of you, not explanations. Just truths. We took them without opening them. Some things are meant to be read alone. That night, at home I opened mine. She wrote about meeting my father, about loving him despite his flaws, about regretting the years she'd wasted pretending she didn't feel something was wrong. She thanked me for standing up for her, without turning her into a victim. The last line stayed with me. You broke a cycle. I didn't know how to stop. I folded the letter and sat quietly for a long time. As fall approached, life settled into a new rhythm. Holidays no longer felt like landmines, just dates. Moments, opportunities to choose differently. We didn't always get it right. There were still awkward pauses, still moments when someone said the wrong thing, but no one pretended anymore. One afternoon, Michael asked if I wanted to go fishing. Just the two of us. The invitation caught me off guard. Fishing had been my thing with Dad. Sure, I said after a moment. We didn't talk much on the water, We didn't need to. At one point he said, I spent years thinking I wanted an apology, and now, I asked. Now I think I wanted proof I mattered, he said. You do, I said. You always did. He nodded, eyes fixed on the line. I know that now. That evening, Hannah asked how it went. I told her. She smiled. Good, she said. I like him. Winter came again, quieter than the last. One night, while decorating the tree, Hannah hung a new ornament. It was simple, just a small wooden circle, with the word family carved into it. Where did you get that? My wife asked. Hannah shrugged. Made it. I watched it sway gently as she stepped back. No names. No conditions. Just the word. Later, when the house was quiet, my wife leaned against me. Do you ever think about how differently this could have gone? She asked. All the time, I said. And, she asked. I think about how close we came to letting anger decide for us, I said, and how lucky we were that it didn't. She nodded. Luck and choice. I thought again of my father's letter, of his regrets, of the burden he'd passed down without meaning to, and of the moment we'd chosen to set it down, because endings aren't always about closure. Sometimes they're about direction, and ours finally felt like it was pointing somewhere forward. The last thing my mother did, before the holidays that year, was ask us all to come over early. Not for dinner. Not for gifts. Just to sit. She said she had something she wanted to say while her voice was still steady and everyone was listening. We gathered in the living room, the same one where so much had unraveled the year before. The tree was lit but undecorated. No pressure. No performance. Just a quiet space, waiting to be used honestly. My mother stood instead of sitting. I won't do this long, she said. I've learned that waiting for the perfect moment usually means missing it. She looked at Elaine first. You should have been acknowledged from the start. I'm sorry that didn't happen. Then she turned to Michael. You should never have had to fight to be seen. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. Sometimes being named is enough. She turned to Hannah last. And you, she said gently, deserve adults who tell the truth even when it's uncomfortable. Hannah nodded. Eyes bright. Thank you, Grandma. My mother sat down. Exhausted but lighter. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about tying everything into a neat bow. It was about saying what mattered while you still could. That Christmas was different. No dramatic revelations. No sudden knocks at the door. Just food, conversation, and moments that didn't feel borrowed or fragile. At one point I caught Michael helping Hannah hang lights outside, both of them laughing at how crooked they were. Elaine and my wife talked quietly at the kitchen counter like they'd always known each other. Later that night, after everyone left, I sat with my mother by the tree. Do you regret anything? I asked. She thought for a long time. I regret the years I spent protecting a story instead of people, she said. But I'm grateful I got the chance to change it. A few months later, we sold the house. Not because we had to, because my mother was ready. She moved into a smaller place nearby, something easier to manage, on her last day there. She stood in the doorway and took one final look around. I was happy here, she said, and now I'm ready to be happy somewhere else. Life continued, as it does. Michael started bringing his kids around more often. Elaine became part of the rhythm of our lives. Hannah grew into someone unafraid to ask hard questions, and me. I learned that being a good son, a good father, a good man sometimes means choosing truth over comfort. One evening, long after everything had settled, Hannah asked me a question I hadn't expected. Do you think Grandpa would be proud of us? She asked. I thought about the man my father was, and the man he might have been if he'd been braver. I think he'd be relieved, I said. And I think that's close enough. She smiled and leaned her head on my shoulder. Outside, the lights blinked softly, steady and warm, not hiding anything, just marking the passage of time. And for the first time since that Christmas night by the tree, When my daughter asked why her grandmother was crying upstairs, I knew the answer wasn't something we needed to fear anymore, because we'd learned how to listen, and that, more than anything, had changed everything.